Well, hi everyone. Like Daisy said, my name is Becky Rodriguez. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate in chemistry at the University of Minnesota. And today we're going to talk about applying to chemistry PhD programs. So to start off, I just want to say a little bit about me. I'm involved in a lot of different things because I find it to be, one, a lot of fun, but also I feel a certain need to help people in my community. So I currently serve as the University of Minnesota's SACNA's chapter president. SACNA stands for the Society of the Advancement of Chicano, Hispanic, and Native Americans in Science or in STEM. I also serve as a Women in Science and Engineering officer. I serve on the Chemistry Department's Diversity and Inclusion Committee, as well as the College of Science and Engineering's Diversity and Inclusion Student and Postdoc Action Team Committee. I've served as a mentor in a wide variety of different mediums. This is my second year serving as a Científico Latino GSMI mentor. I've also in the past done some stuff with the sort of the Council of Graduate Students, who is like the governing body at our university, as the chemistry representative. I do some work with polymers, so I've served on the University of Minnesota's ACS Polypensy chapter. I'm also a member of the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers. So enough about like that stuff. Something that I'm really passionate about is outreach and community engagement. I actually have a lot of cool outreach pictures, but what people find to be most interested, obviously, is stuff with fire and explosions. So here's just two pictures from some of those events. And yeah, it's just something I'm like super passionate about. And if you'd love to talk offline about that, feel free to contact me. Oops, I accidentally opened something. There we go. So a little bit more about me. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. That's basically where I grew up. I was born in Maryland, but I didn't live there long enough to claim it. And I did my undergrad at American University in Washington, D.C. I was going to be an international relations major, which is why I went there, and somehow ended up majoring in chemistry after I changed my majors like a million times. I also did a research experience for undergrads, or an REU, at Duke University in the electrical and computer engineering department doing nanoparticle synthesis. After that, I came to the University of Minnesota in about 2016, technically got my master's along the way, but nobody really cares about that. And I'm supposed to maybe graduate one day. We'll see. My research is in the detection of various types of food contaminants with polymer affinity agents and a spectroscopy technique called surface enhanced Raman. And yeah, I've actually been involved in a lot of different research projects. I should also mention I did an internship at a naval base working to make sensors there in Dahlgren, Virginia at the Naval Surface Warfare Center in the Chemical, Biological, and Radiological Defense Division last summer. But besides all that, a little bit more personal about me is I'm first generation Latinx. I grew up in a pretty low income household, and both my parents are immigrants from Durango, Mexico. My dad only finished 6th grade and my mom only finished 9th grade. And so education was something that was really, really important to my family. I think really because they weren't able to attend school themselves. My dad had to work at a pretty young age, and in Mexico, you have to pay to go to high school. And so my mom wasn't allowed to. They decided to pay for her brothers to go. So my parents have done a lot of good things in putting me and my sisters, who are pictured here. Those are my two brother-in-laws. I also have a niece who's 3, but this was before that. Putting us all through college, as well as one of my sisters has a master's degree in business administration. So education is super, super important to me and my family. I have no idea I would one day be in a doctorate program. That never even crossed my mind. I remember at my sister's master's graduation, I was about maybe like in 11th grade. My sisters are much older than me. And my dad turned to me and he was like, "You're next, but with your PhD." And I had no idea what that even meant. I was like, how do I even get a PhD? But but I'm still here, so that's a good thing. So getting right into it, how do I know a PhD program is right for me? Where do I even start? So PhD programs are really about having a passion for learning and problem solving. It's no like surprise actually that whatever you get your PhD in is probably not what you're going to work in your future career. So really what people are looking for when with PhD graduates, as well as people who want to attend these programs, are about having a passion for, being able to solve various types of problems on a day-to-day basis and being excited about science. And so if this is something that you're passionate about, I really encourage you all to apply. Even though the application process is a little bit of work, which is why I put all of this together for you guys so that you guys have a better understanding on how to attack this application process. So things to kind of think about are, what kind of research are you passionate about? Are you interested in total synthesis organic chemistry? Me personally, no, I hate organic chemistry. Do you like materials chemistry? Are you interested in nanotechnology, chemical biology? There's a wide variety of different fields, subset fields in chemistry. So those are all different things to think about. And I definitely suggest start by just looking at random research groups, whether it be at your own institution or other places that you think might be interesting, and make note of what kinds of things excite you. It might be that you read something and you're like, wow, I didn't even know research like that existed. And that's what I want to do. So let's start with the overall process. So one is taking the GRE. Good thing is that a lot of programs are Grexiting, which is meaning they're eliminating their GRE requirement. Two, pick graduate programs that you're interested in. Make sure that you're interested in 2 to 3 professors at least. Make a list of programs of which ones you want to apply to. 5 to 10 is average, anywhere along that. I applied to 12. I do not recommend that. I was really afraid I wasn't going to get into grad school, and so I kind of overcompensated for that there. And waivers do exist to apply to these programs. Don't be afraid to ask. The person who's advocating for you is you, and so I really push for people asking for fee waivers, whether they have them on their website or you have to seek them out yourself. 3, ask for letters of recommendation. These should be from professors who know you well. So for example, I worked with 2 professors in undergrad who were 2 people I asked. And then I also had an advisor from my RU experience who I asked as well. Those are my 3 letter writers, 2 who knew me really well, another one who saw me work hard in a 2-month span. 4 is to start drafting your research statement or statement of purpose. Have as many people as you can edit it, friends, professors, family members, whoever. It's actually really nice to get insight from people who are not necessarily in the chemistry field. 5, submit the application. And then usually wait to hear back for interviews and fly to visit the school, usually pre-COVID. So hopefully things will be better by the time you guys start hearing back from certain institutions. And I think there might be something in the chat. Oh, thanks, Daisy. So the GRE, let's talk a little bit about that exam. It's very similar to the SAT in terms of standardized testing. Obviously, I took the SAT a really long time ago, but you guys are probably closer in age to have remembered the SAT. It's actually taken at a computer, and so you get your results immediately, except for the writing score. And you actually have the option to send your scores before seeing them to different institutions for free, I think up to 5. I didn't want to do that because I was like, what if I failed? But it is an option if you feel pretty confident. Schools care the most about your math score. So there's a math score, a reading score, and a writing score. They care the most about the math score, but honestly, it's not the most important part of your application. So, and then with all these different universities that are Grexiting, which actually in the last couple of slides, we have some resources. I would, if there's definitely a place that doesn't require you to take the GRE, I would say to definitely apply there. especially because sending a GRE test score to universities, I believe $27 each time you do it. So applying to like 10 schools, that tends to add up. What's good to know is that the GEM Fellowship, which is a fellowship geared towards BIPOC students, will give you half off fee waivers if you apply to the GEM Fellowship. There's two parts to the application. The first one is, I think, due sometime in October, and then the second part later on. But some of the same requirements are what you would use for your grad application anyway. And so if you submit your application, that first part of the application by that October-ish deadline, they'll give you half off your GRE fee waiver. So that's pretty exciting because you can still take the test and for half the cost of what the test is. If you decide to buy prep books, I really suggest the ones that have online practice tests. Those are the most similar to what the GRE is actually like. And so it actually gives you a better understanding or a better like feel for what you're going to get into rather than just like the books that have practice test questions. So picking schools to apply to. Research. Make sure the research is interesting in multiple labs because when you get there, projects may be over. It might be that that professor isn't taking any students. It might be that the project has lost funding. There are a wide variety of different things, or the project isn't exactly the same anymore. They're taking a different direction. So be sure to be flexible in that sense, which is why it's important to be interested in multiple labs. Don't apply to a school if you're only interested in one person. It doesn't make sense. Especially because once you get there, you have to like look for the professor. Do they want to take you on? Do they have funding? Like there's still so many like different criteria there. So make sure you're interested in more than one professor and that you find research interesting as a whole rather than one specific project. Location. For some people, this is really important due to family constraints or certain, like maybe you just like really, really hate the cold and you could never see yourself being in a cold place. I say ironically living in Minnesota. So look in places that work best for you. Personally, I had no restraint in location. So I applied to schools all over. I had no intention of coming to Minnesota and I visited and I actually loved it. So don't rule out certain places if you're turned off by the location at first. The second thing, or the third thing, sorry, is to email professors. Feel free to send an email to professors to set up a time to talk. All you have to say is like, hey, Dr. So-and-so, my name is this, or I can be more specific here. My name is Becky Rodriguez. I am a senior at American University, and I really like the research that you're doing with this, this, and this. I personally am interested in this, this, and this. Would you have time to talk sometime soon in regards to your research? Don't send your CV. Don't send a super long like email about your life because they probably won't have that much time to read it. But I would say definitely email some professors. And if they don't respond to you, don't take it personally. Some people respond right away. Some people get too busy. Your email gets lost, or maybe it goes to spam by accident. So if you don't get a response, but you're really, really interested in that research lab, email grad students in the lab. You can look them up on their website. You can look them up from the papers that they publish. Grad students are probably going to answer. And if they're really interested about their work, they'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. So I definitely encourage people to send emails to professors or graduate students if you're really, really interested in the work, especially because these professors might serve on the committee for the application process. Maybe they'll remember your name and think, oh, I know this person. They did this, this, and this, and I spoke to them, and I think they're a great candidate for the department. The other thing is to think about cost of living versus your stipend. Is it enough to live? In some schools, it is. In some schools, sadly, it isn't. So be sure to like look into that based on where you're going to live and what the stipend is. The stipend should be posted on the website. So there's all like full transparency there. Another question to ask there is, do you get funding? Do you have to RA or TA? Like what's discrepancies there? I would definitely look into that. Other things that I was interested, I had a huge like spreadsheet where I wrote down all the things that were important to me personally including GPA requirements, the day that the application was due, how many letters are required, et cetera, et cetera. I was really curious, like, what's their percentage of minorities? How many students actually attend the university who are from diverse backgrounds? What is the percentage of women? Do they have fellowships for minorities or women? Are they making an effort to recruit actively? These are all questions that I had. And if it's something that you're passionate about, it should be something that's on your mind too. And luckily, Científico Latino has talks on how to pick schools, and it is linked in this slide deck, which I think you guys will get. So I would definitely look into attending some more of the talks that Científico Latino has put together to make some of this a little bit easier. Letters of recommendation. So these, I want to preface this by saying that there is a lot of privilege that comes from being able to ask people for letters of rec. If you hadn't made a connection, or it's been harder, or you're really shy, or there's a lot that goes into being able to get a strong letter of rec. And so I totally recognize that. And again, we can talk offline about that if you would like. But I would definitely recommend having your letter writers be people who believe in you, like truly, truly believe in you. And you can actually ask professors to talk about specific events in your letter of rec. So let's say you had a death in your family, or you had a really low GPA because you were working, or you were really struggling to like do research, school, job, taking care of family, like a lot of other things go on, and you have other responsibilities, and it's understandable. And you can ask professors to talk about that, to talk about like the events of, even though they have a low GPA because of X, I've seen them work hard, and I've seen them like be able to hold their own. And that's important in a graduate program. Also, pick letter writers who are going to talk about your accomplishments and your potential. You're able to send your CV of accomplishments to your letter writers. Maybe some of them didn't know that you volunteer at a hospital every Saturday morning. So definitely feel free to send that, but also that they're able to comment on the fact that you are a strong candidate, and you will be a strong candidate when you attend their university. A fourth letter writer is optional. It's not as encouraged. It can be a backup plan in case you think one of your letter writers isn't going to get something in on time. But usually by the fourth person, a lot of these are kind of like letters are kind of watered down almost. So it's okay to have that option, but it wouldn't be suggested for you to like ask the history professor you had once that you got an A in to write you a letter rec for this. Like, that's not really going to help your application. Letters of recommendation are a very important piece of your application, because it's the way that the university is talking to respected individuals on you as a person. So if they are like someone who they trust, and they're talking about how great you are, they're going to be like, wow, this person said this person's great. Sounds good. Let's accept them to university. Excuse me. So they're a really, really important part of your application. So I would definitely choose wisely on who you want to talk about you in that sense. Let's see if there's any questions. Okay, research statement or statement of purpose. Actually, Científico Latino had a talk on this yesterday, which I know is recorded. So if you need some help there, be sure to check that out as well. One is being able to discuss your passion for chemistry. Don't be too cheesy, but you can be a little cheesy. Like, you can be like, oh, my high school teacher was a huge mentor for me, and that's really the first time I ever saw a chemistry like experiment on a floor, and it really caught my attention, and I want to like do something like that in the future. I want to teach, or something like that. Don't say like, since the beginning of time, chemistry has existed, and I have also existed, and thus chemistry and I are one. Like, don't be overly cheesy. But it's okay to talk about events that are important to you, that sort of catalyze the reason why. See what I did there? Catalyze. See the reason why you're interested in chemistry. You should talk about your research experiences, what you contributed. So when I did my REU at Duke, I was the only chemist because I was working in the electrical and computer engineering department. So I was synthesizing nanoparticles for them. And they trusted what I did. And it really taught me autonomy, and it taught me to be able to hold my own and have like vindication in like my research experiences. And you should say that. You should say, I learned to be autonomous, and I learned to like be confident in my chemistry ability. Like all those things that you learn that start talking about your character as a chemist are all helpful. You should definitely talk about leadership positions, clubs, organizations. You can say, you know, I served, for me personally, I was a women in science. We didn't have an engineering department at American, so it was just women in science. Executive board, and we helped plan different activities and helped Girl Scouts get their science badge, and really like started my love for outreach. And we even invited Dr. Joe Handelsman, which was the head science director for President Obama, to come talk to us. And I was like, that's a woman in STEM, and like I want to do that. Like that's so awesome. So be sure to talk about your leadership positions, clubs, or organizations. What if you didn't have time to do a lot of that in college? What if you were working all the time to live? You can talk about that too. Like you can talk about the fact that, you know, I worked a lot in college because I was doing X, Y, and Z. And I think that the fact that I was able to balance both work and school and research shows that I am an awesome person. And you should say that in better words than I just did. But you should talk about great things about you. It's uncomfortable a little bit. I've always find it to be uncomfortable to like be like, I'm so awesome. I do all awesome things. Please like me because I am awesome. But this is the only like one of the only ways that they get to know you. And so you should be honest about what those things are. I will say your research experiences are probably one of the most important parts of your research statement, because they want to hear that not only did you do all these things, but you still are dedicated to the science. Other things to do is, what kind of research are you interested in? Are you really, really interested in what I do, surface enhanced Raman spectroscopy? Maybe you're meant to do stuff with lasers. Maybe you are a physical chemist. And you should mention what kind of research you're interested in, and mention professors from that institution, and say, I personally am interested in Dr. X because of the research that they're doing here, and it really aligns well with my career goals. Which leads me to the next thing. Talk about your future career goals. Do you want to be a professor? Do you want to work for industry? Do you want to go into science policy? These are all fine things to talk about because it shows that you're thinking about what you can do with your future PhD. I suggest writing one large research statement where you have all this information and use it as a master statement for all of your applications. Some may ask and be like, just talk about research in this section and then talk about personal experiences in this section. Some say, just tell us everything in one document. You can just break it up however you need to. Be sure to look through these before you submit, because it's not great if you go and talk about, I want to do research for this professor, and then that professor isn't even a professor at that school. So be sure to proofread. But you can use just one big master statement for all of your applications, and that way it's a lot easier to sort of tackle each application that you're doing. Check that out.
Becky, we have a question from Diana Lopez. This is regarding the letters of rec. And so they ask, so I am a transfer student and 7 years of my life, I worked as a medical assistant. Can one of my letters of rec be from a physician I worked for so long, and let the other two be from professors?
That is a great question, Diana. Yes, I think you should definitely ask for a letter, or for a letter of recommendation from the physician you worked for, because it definitely shows they like got to know you on a personal level. They show the amount of work that you put into your day-to-day. And so I think that is a super appropriate person to ask for your letter of research, especially if you're also asking two other professors that you know.
100% agreed. Thanks for the question, Diana, and thank you, Becky.
Okay, so all the files are now submitted. You did your research statement. You took the GRE, even though only 2 schools you're applying to needed it. You got your letters of rec. Everything's good. Now what happens? We wait. Most applications are due sometime between November, December, sometimes even January. And you start to hear back around February to March is usually when you hear back. And decision day is April 15th, I believe. If that's still right, I hope it is.
It was.
I hope it's still April 15th. So yeah, so you wait. And it's important here to talk about rejections. Rejections happen. They happen. It's sad, and you can totally be sad about them. But keep in mind that some programs reject you not because you're not a good candidate, but rather you're not the right fit for that particular program. That university and their committee that chooses applicants, that goes through the applicant pool and chooses who to admit, they know their university pretty well. They know their department culture pretty well. Maybe you talk about how passionate you are about outreach and how passionate you are about like your culture and everything. And like they know that their department is super, super, super wonder bread. And so they're like, this would not be a good fit. Or maybe it's like that you really, really want to do research in this subject, but they don't have a lot of professors doing research in that anymore. Or, you know, the professors are leaving or something along those lines. And so keep in mind that it's not that you're not a good candidate. It's just maybe you're not the right fit for that school. And that's okay, because you would hate to go there and then find out that you're not a good fit for that school. Like that would really suck. And also, acceptances happen. Usually pre-COVID, programs fly you out to visit their programs and they want you to attend. So they're going to do everything in their power to woo you, to talk to you about things. And here's a small secret that I will share. If you are stuck in between 2 programs and you're like, really, I don't know what I'm going to do. One school is offering you more money. You can actually send your acceptance letter to the other department and be like, hey, they're offering me this much money. Do you guys have any fellowships or anything that could match that like stipend? And some people get it. Some people get that extra money in the stipend and they're like, great, I can go to the school and live comfortably and be happy about it. So definitely figure out what's most important to you but be excited and let them like woo you to the point where it's just like, yes, they want me. I want them. It's a match. I'm going here for grad school. So we did everything. We flew out pre-COVID. What do you even ask? What do you even say? What do you even do once you get there? Or even if you don't get there, if you just, even before that, there are a ton of questions you can ask. You can ask, how long do your students TA? How long does it take to graduate? How many days a week do your students work? How does funding work? How often do students go to conferences? How often do students present at those conferences? How often can we afford to go out to conferences? You know, all those are fine questions to ask, and you can ask anything you want. The other thing is to ask graduate students all the questions. A lot of grad students won't lie, like they just won't. We have other things to do than to lie about our grad program. So they're going to tell you the truth about things. They'll tell you if there's an advisor who's super hands off that you don't ever see like once or twice a month, like they're just gone. And maybe that really works for you. Maybe you're just like, I don't want my advisor to ever be around. I just want to do my own thing. I want to go into lab, meet with them when I have to. And that's fine. That works for plenty of people. Maybe that advisor is super hands-on and they show up in the lab office every day, every morning at a specific hour, and they're wondering what you're doing. And some people like that. Some people like to have like very close guidance from their advisor. That's okay too. So grad students will tell you the truth about all kinds of advisors, people to stay away from, people who are awesome, people to put on your committees, like all that will be told. They'll tell you about lab teaching environments, how things work when you TA, how things work. Do you even have to TA? Can you TA because you want to be a professor and you want to get hands-on teaching experience? Are you going to TA a lab? Are you going to TA a course? Are you going to do grading? Like there's a wide variety of the way things work in a department. They'll also tell you safe neighborhoods to live in, public transit, living costs, things to do in the Twin Cities, or sorry, things to do in your city, or if you come to Minnesota, things to do in the Twin Cities, as well as, you know, what kinds of things are the grad students happy? Like that's definitely a question to ask. Like, are you happy doing work here? Are you happy working for your advisor? Are you happy with like what you've accomplished thus far? How hard is it to publish in this group? I've heard of some people who they'll write a paper and their professor will be like, nope, don't like it, try again. Or people who are like, you need to write this paper immediately. So definitely, definitely ask all of those questions. And I also have a list compiled that is actually from my institution that might be helpful as well. So we have all the Grexit chemistry programs known thus far in a Google Doc. Also a document that I just mentioned, what to ask professors or graduate students, a link to the GEM Fellowship, the NSF GRFP. I know that I'm going to plug Científico Latino again. They have talks on the NSF and 4 Fellowship. There's also the NSDG Fellowship, which is with the Department of Defense, as well as the SMART Fellowship, which is also the Department of Defense. There is a graduate funding like fellowship program. The Pathways to Science, which some of you may know, like that website, also have a lot of information for undergrads about applying to graduate school. And Científico Latino has a whole list of different graduate school fellowships to look at. The other thing I should have mentioned was that if you're applying to graduate school, you should also have a list of fellowships to apply to. They have very similar requirements, as well as the most you have to do is write a proposal, which you can work and talk to your advisor about. But all those things can help you get funding, which is really nice because if you come with your own funding, you technically have no restrictions and can get into like any lab that you want because you come with your own funding. So I would definitely suggest people looking into fellowship writing and fellowship applications while applying to graduate school. A lot of their deadlines, I believe, are in end of October to December. So they coincide pretty well. So yeah, I would be happy to take any questions. So I have a question now. How is the chemistry PhD program application different than that of a biochemistry PhD program? That's a great question. It depends. So there's actually some biochemistry programs that are in chemistry. So technically it's housed in the chemistry department. At my institution, actually biochemistry is housed in the biochemistry, molecular biology, and biophysics program. So it depends on what the program is there. I know that biochemistry programs often require interviews, which I know Científico Latino actually has a lot of resources on how to handle an interview like this, because chemistry programs usually just accept you and then you go and visit. And I believe biochemistry programs, oftentimes you actually have to interview before a final decision is made. So it really just depends on how the biochemistry department is housed, which I know is kind of a complicated answer because ironically, biochemistry is a mix of chemistry and biology. And a lot of biology programs require interviews and chemistry programs do not. So that answers your question a little bit. So I would definitely do a little bit more research on the biochemistry programs, the specific one that you're interested in applying to. Okay, here's another question. I'm in the process of contacting professors. Do you recommend that I use my personal Gmail account or send emails from my department issued account? I would go with either. The department issued account usually might look nicer, but honestly, it really doesn't matter. As long as you say who you are and where you go to school, like it won't be spam. It's totally fine. Unless your Gmail account is like cute kitty like 033 or something, then maybe don't use a personal Gmail account. But if your personal Gmail account is like your name, like that's totally fine.
I also would like to add that, for example, like in college, right? I was applying as a senior undergrad. And so I know that upon graduation, and I graduated a semester early. And so my email account was like terminated almost. And so it was like inactive. So if, when you're getting like, these acceptance emails and things like that, make sure, right, that you are getting those emails and your email account is not inactivated or anyways. So that's also another reason to think about, right? Your personal this. Mm-hmm.
Again, but maybe think about making another personal Gmail account if, again, your name is like super cute kitty or something. Another question. How big is a normal graduate class in chemistry? I'm concerned that chemistry PhD programs accept fewer students than biochemistry PhD programs. Also a great question. Depends on the school. Big schools usually accept more people. Smaller schools usually accept smaller people. So to give you a number, my university or my department, my chemistry department, accepts around 100 students or so. And then usually somewhere between 40 to 60 attend.
Wow.
So I don't know if necessarily chemistry programs are more competitive. I would maybe disagree. I might think the biochemistry programs are a little bit more competitive, but I definitely think that if you're looking at big schools, a big I mean as in like state schools, it's totally fine. And in places like Caltech or MIT, yeah, it might be a little bit harder to get in because they get an absurd amount of people applying. But usually with some of these like bigger state schools that usually have pretty good funding, I think the chemistry class ranges somewhere between like 40 to 50 each year with like double that to full acceptances that they allow. Okay, question. I enjoyed your presentation. How many professors do you recommend to mail in a particular school? Do you mean
perhaps email or?
Yeah, it might be email. You can email as many as you want. You can email, if it is email, and you can clarify if it's not. You can email 10 if you wanted to. But I emailed the people I was most interested in. So let's say I looked at a school and there were 5 people I was interested, I'd email all 5. There's probably not going to be a place where you're interested in 10 professors. I'd email the people you're interested, which is usually somewhere between 3 to like 4 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to like tell, like they're not going to be like, hey friend, this person emailed me, did they email you, they like someone else too? Like that's totally not going to happen. How many international students are accepted into chemistry PhD programs? That's a great question. It is a little bit different because of the extra application material I guess I didn't talk about, which is the oh gosh, the name is escaping me. It's the TOEFL. But I would say a decent amount. The issue is that if you don't live domestic and you live internationally, they usually don't invite you to come visit the school because it tends to be more expensive. If you're an international student who is domestic, they'll invite you, excuse me, but I would say probably at my university, maybe around half of the students maybe were international, a little less than that. So they do accept a decent amount of international students. I don't think that they necessarily discriminate international from domestic. I think they're just interested in like good candidates for the department.
I just shared in the chat box below. So one of our Scientific Latino team members, Anibal, so he actually compiled like a massive TOEFL list of all the scores you need to hit and the school code corresponding to each PhD program. So I've linked that in the chat box as well.
I think the TOEFL part definitely complicates things a little bit more because it's just another part of your application that counts. So, and sometimes I will say sometimes certain universities will accept you even if you have a lower TOEFL score, but they just require you to take some English courses when you get there. Am I required to find a prospective advisor before applying to chemistry PhD programs? Are there rotation chemistry programs or do I join a specific lab? You are not required to find a prospective advisor. That is something I think that's done a lot in other programs, especially in the social sciences. You are not required to find an advisor. You get an advisor when you come. So there are two different methods. There are either rotations, which you do go work for a lab, for those who do not know, go work for a specific lab. And at some schools, it is required to do rotations for like a month or two. And then you go rotate in a different lab, do research for a month or two there, and then like another one, maybe like 2 to 3 or something. And then once you finish your rotations, you kind of pick your favorite one, and then you end up working there for like the rest of the time in your PhD. In my program, actually, we don't have rotations, and we spend the first couple months of our time talking to grad students, talking to professors. You can shadow people, and then you get sort of, we actually do like a ranking system, which honestly is a bit archaic, but you're like, hey, I want to work for this person. And then this person is always like, hey, I also want to work for this person. So it's okay. But yeah, you don't need to find a prospective advisor already. Some people do. Some people come the summer before, after they've been accepted, the summer before their first year of grad school, and like work in a lab and have decided that that's the place they're going to be, and they're done. But you can apply and not have anyone particularly that you're going to like work for, or you could just be a range of people.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, is there a GPA or GRE cutoff for chemistry programs? This is a great question. GPA, usually it's around 3.0. I will say, I went through a lot of things in undergrad, and I actually had a GPA lower than that. And I got into 6 schools. So clearly it's not something that's super, super important if you are a strong candidate in other places. In terms of the GRE, usually no. But some universities actually have posted, I know Cornell does specifically, has what their cutoffs are for certain places. That shouldn't discourage you though from applying. I'd still apply, even if like your GPA is lower, or your GRE is lower or something like that. Maybe you're just really bad at taking standardized testing. I'm not good at standardized testing. I'm very average at standardized testing. And I know plenty of people who are super awesome at standardized testing, but are not really good at like being able to solve problems quickly or something. Another question, how do I address a GPA lower than 3.0 in my personal statement? Also a great question. A lot of applications actually have a section that says, is there anything else you want to tell us? Which I think is great. A lot of applications have this. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Or tell us of a difficult time in your life, which honestly, little, But is there anything else you want to tell us? I would definitely say, you can say, I mean, I don't know your reasoning for your lower GPA. Maybe you just like had too much going on, and that's totally fine. I think it shows. You can say something along the lines of, I think what I said was, I had all this going on in my life, and yet I still accomplish all these things. And that shows that I can persevere, I can work through hard times, and I'm still like a good candidate. And I hope you guys see that. And I mean, it got me in places, so it worked. But yeah, don't be afraid to talk about it. It's not something necessarily that's like gonna hurt you. If anything, it's nice to know, like, you know, that's the kind of questions they're gonna ask. Why does this person have all these great things, but their GPA is 2.5 or something? And you can address that. You can say like, it's one of my weaker points on my application, but it's still super like important, or I was still good at like what I did, and which is why I'm applying to this school, because it seems like this place would like benefit from who I am. I'm sorry. I should have grabbed some water. Next question. Do admission committees tend to pay more attention to grades in upper year courses / the last 2 years? Yes. It's usually when you take more of your major courses, so they usually pay the most attention. They don't really care that much that you got an A in an anthropology class, unfortunately. I actually think I did get an A. No, it was a sociology class? I don't remember anymore. But yeah, they're gonna pay more attention to like what you got in calculus or what you got in analytical chemistry, because it's more relevant to the program. Okay, how many years of research experience do you need to be competitive for chemistry PhD programs? Also a great question. I would say at least a year of research experience would be helpful. But honestly, there's a lot that goes into being able to get a research position. Like it might be that you had a lot of other things going on and you couldn't get a research position because the hours didn't align right with your like other what are the word, not requirements, but the other things that you do, your other commitments, my bad. But it is what they care the most about. So if you have some time to like do research, it's definitely important to have it for your application. If you haven't done any research, I would suggest waiting to apply to grad school until you do, because it's something that they really care about, because it shows that you're able to do research, which is basically what all of grad school is.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 years of research experience, which is, I would say, a little less likely for a chemistry major, but I didn't know I want to major in chemistry, so I didn't start doing research until my junior year of college. And then I like jumped in and did like a million different projects. So that really helped me because I was able to talk about all these different projects that I was involved in. But yeah, I would say having like a good year under your belt or something along those lines is good.
Yes, so I also put in a chat box, our postbac database on our CL website. So these are all the opportunities that you guys can apply to and pursue immediately after college graduation to enhance your research experiences, to strengthen your CV and resume. Yeah.
Yep. I definitely suggest you all, if you don't have any research experience right now, to do some sort of post-bac program, or something that would get you some sort of experience that would be helpful for your application.
Or pursuing a lab tech position as well. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who do pursue lab tech position or research positions at certain universities and certain labs, sometimes end up just like applying
Staying.
there and being accepted and staying.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a lot of noise, and I was like, oh my gosh. Question: when do chemistry PhD programs tell you of acceptances, rejections, waitlisted? Great question. It depends on when the application is due. But I would say most applications are due sometime between November to January, and you start hearing back sometime between February and March. Some people don't tell you that you're rejected until like May or something, which is kind of dumb because
horrible.
Like you have to tell what school, you have to tell like you decide by like April 15th anyway. So it like doesn't make sense for them to tell you, hey, surprise, we rejected you. Some also chemistry PhD programs, if they don't think you're a strong enough candidate for their PhD program, which might be that they think that you lack certain, let's say you've been a biologist basically your whole life when you're applying to chemical engineering programs. They might think, well, like they think they need a little bit more like math and engineering classes under their belt. So they may accept you into a master's program instead. That is definitely something that can happen. And that becomes a little bit difficult because master's programs usually are not funded. They can be, but they're usually not. And chemistry PhD programs are completely funded, or they should be. And so that definitely depends on like funding, on if you want to take an acceptance like that or wait list or a master's. But they should tell you sometime between February to March or so.
Okay, I think that was our last question. Any more questions? Minute, yeah. Because if not, then I guess this is the end. All right. So thank you guys so much, everyone, here with us in the Zoom webinar and also on our YouTube live stream platform. Well, I just see a notification. We have one last question.
Awesome. How diverse are chemistry PhD programs? Do you recommend certain programs? That's an awesome question. Yes and no. There are some places that you wouldn't expect to be as diverse as they are / support diversity. It really depends on how things are when you get there, unfortunately. So I will give you some examples. The University of Minnesota is a great place. Everyone should come here. Some places that I visited personally that had really good diversity initiatives that I was surprised by were Virginia Tech. I actually applied to their material science and engineering program, and they actually had a lot of efforts pushed to like trying to get students of color to come there because it's such like a I mean, it's a college town, Blacksburg, Virginia. There's not much there. Um, so yeah, I obviously programs that are in the Midwest are usually less diverse. It's usually because a lot of people who go to school in the Midwest are usually from the Midwest. So I will tell you, like, Iowa is not very diverse. And that's not necessarily anything against them. It's just that Iowa has farm and Amish people. And so not anything against the Amish are great, but it's obviously a little bit harder to get like people of color
Like
to
there's no influx, efflux. There's no,
yes,
yeah.
yes. But something that you find interesting is, for example, the University of Minnesota um, has the second largest Somali population, actually, next to Somalia because of refugees. And so there are certain places that will surprise you for sure. But all of like these programs, you are more than welcome to email the department chair and be like, hi, I'm applying to this school and I couldn't find this information online. Do you mind telling me what the demographics are of your department? It's a completely valid question to ask, to be like, I want to know. I want to know how many people of color there are. I want to know how many women there are. I want to know how you guys support LGBTQ students. Like, what are the initiatives that you guys have? And if it's not completely advertised, why isn't it? And that's 100% valid to ask. I would recommend, obviously, UC schools are pretty diverse. And some schools in the South, but it depends again, because racism. And I can say that because I lived in North Carolina. But yeah, I think some places actually will surprise you, but you are more than welcome to actually ask department chairs to provide that information because they will. This is a hard question. What are the best chemistry PhD programs? Well, and what are the ones I should avoid? This is difficult. I don't want to bash any school and I don't want to bash any department. What I will say is certain schools have certain cultures, and it works for some people and it doesn't work for some people. For example, I know for Caltech is like is one of the like top #1 chemistry programs in the entire United States. It tends to recruit people for the Nobel Prize, like, and they're at the forefront of like big scientific discoveries, and they're a good school for it. I know that some of the culture tends to be sometimes competitive between professors, and so then sometimes that translates to the graduate students in terms of being competitive. And for some people, it really works. Like, it really works that they're like, I want to be #1. I want to be competitive. Your name is technically tied to your advisor for the rest of your life. And like, if you work for a Nobel Prize winner, like, that's super awesome. But for some people, it doesn't work as well. For me personally, speaking about me, I'm not a very competitive person, like, at all. I'm not competitive. I actually could care less about competitions. I'd rather just like hang out and watch people compete. I don't do sports. I don't do any of these other things because I'm not competitive. Like, I'm just like, nice, good job, everybody. Everybody gets a trophy, which is not how most people think. Participation trophy, yes. But I don't. And so if you want to work in a place that's really competitive, and because that's something that drives you, like, do it. Go to a school like that where you will like meet super important people who are written about in textbooks. If you don't want to do something like that, then I would suggest not applying to a school like that, where it's like some of these really, really big programs are awesome, but the culture tends to be different, I think, especially if you come from like a smaller school like I did. I wanted to go to a place that had funding because I wanted to go to usually schools that have funding. You can do cool science at. And so I wanted to go to a school with funding, but I also didn't necessarily want to go to a place that I felt like I couldn't be myself. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many great schools.
Yeah.
If you look at, I know that the US news list sometimes changes, but they have like a list of like some of the top places. If you want to be a good chemist, you can go anywhere. It was suggested to me to look at usually like the top 10 or 20% of programs, because those are usually some places where you can do really well. But yeah, I would just be cognizant of what kind of culture you want to be in.
I also want to add that, I think it's an analogy that everyone uses is that, grad school PhD is a marathon, right? And so, I mean, if you're going to be in this competitive mindset all the time for 5, 6 years, I mean, you're going to be burnt out really quickly, right? And so, yeah, and so mental health is always going to be first, right?
Yeah.
Happiness is
And,
first.
and, and I totally agree. Like some place, I have a lot of friends at who are very happy. We're Northwestern, and it's a really good school and also has Nobel Prize winners, one of the best in chemistry. Um, Also, just wasn't really the environment I wanted, just me personally. But I know plenty of people who are very, very happy there. So really, just I would say this goes back to like talking to graduate students there, because they'll tell you what the culture is. They'll tell you, do they collaborate? Is that something, oftentimes people don't collaborate if they're really competitive because they want to keep their own like clique within themselves to be able to make sure that they can like patent their stuff. So yeah, this goes back to being able to ask graduate students what their most interest, like what they can pull out about their program. And that usually will be good things or bad things. Like I visited a school, I won't say which one it was, that one of the grad students was like, I have to work on the weekends. I can't afford to live here. And I was like, that sucks. I don't want to go to a place like that. I don't want to go to a place where I have to work on the weekends. I want to like go to school and, come home and hang out by myself. Like I don't want to, and so again, ask grad students like what their comments are about the department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, final words of advice for how to, what a nice closer. Final words of advice for how to have a strong chemistry grad school application. Mm, I would say be honest. You can be the most perfect candidate and they have no idea, because all they have in front of them is these like 4 or 5 things that define you. So be honest. Like if you, you know, me, I had a job that I worked at a lot. I worked at my library's information desk, as a receptionist until maybe like 11 or 12 at night. Then I would stay in the library and do my homework, and then I'd wake up and do it all over again. And then I'd do research, and then I'd, be in my clubs. And but I had to work. I had to afford to live. DC is a really expensive place. Um, so all these things are what they're going to take from you. And, you have to be honest. You have to say everything that you want them to know, because this is all they get. This is all they get. They get your letters of recommendation, they get your research statement, and some scores on an exam. Like this is your whole application package. So be honest, write truthfully, and get people to edit it. Get people, get as many people as you can to edit your statement of purpose, because certain people will be like, move this paragraph around, this part sounds cheesy, talk more about this. And so it's really helpful to get lots of insight on your statement, because it's what's going to like advertise you to all these other people. Another thing I will say is be excited about science, but don't be weird about it. And what I mean by that is like, obviously you're applying to chemistry graduate school because you're interested in chemistry and you're like, chemistry's so cool. I want to like do it forever. And so write about that. Write about like, I learned how to do this and I'm super excited by this and I'm really passionate about this. But also like, please don't, like, everyone thinks it's weird when you're like, my whole life, all I ever wanted was to be a chemist. I woke up, I was born, and then I just knew I was going to do chemistry. Like that's not real. You're not fooling anybody. And so you're the people in the community are going to be like, wow, this sucks. So be honest and like be excited, but don't like overdo it. Like don't fake it, because you can tell when you fake it, which is why it's important to get as many people to read your letter of research statement as possible.
Awesome. Great words of advice, Becky. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And Becky, thank you for this webinar and sharing your wisdom, shedding light on all of this. And so, yeah, this webinar is going to be, it's recording, and also for those of you in the YouTube live stream, it's going to be uploaded. We will have closed captioning to upload webinars, and so that will be uploaded soon. We have upcoming events, upcoming webinars as well next week, including an overview of graduate school fellowships, as Becky has mentioned, that will also support you for funding, and also an overview of the 4 pre-doctoral fellowship as well. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in future webinars. And once again, thank you so much, Becky, for spending your evening with us. So,
of course, thank you so much, Daisy, for having this. Also, please, everybody, check out all the amazing things Científico Latino does. It truly is an amazing program. I'm so blessed to have people who I know who are associated with it. I've also added my email to the chat. If anybody needs it, feel free to reach out. I'm usually pretty responsive to emails. I kind of live in my email because that's what grad school is. And I also want to say I'm really excited for the closed captioning to catch when I said super cute kitty.
oh yeah.
That's gonna be great. But yeah, like if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. If I can't answer it, I have friends who would be more than happy to. So
Thank you so much, Becky. Yeah,
of course.
all right, bye everyone.
Bye.